Today I want to talk about the day the world ended. Uh, the dynamic and the struggle of either the truth versus not disclosing everything and causing pain. Does truth cause pain or what? And I think that, bottom line, this is a very controversial issue, and I wanted to bring it out because I know we've talked about disclosure. I want to go into this in a little more depth and detail, so as we talk about this, so that you can understand what the spouse goes through the day their world ends. I mean, they're going through life, and everything is spinning and working like it's supposed to. Most spouses are unaware of, especially in the area of sexual addiction or maybe gambling or some addictions, so a lot of process addictions. They're unaware in their universe that anything's wrong. And all of a sudden, something happens. Either you get busted, you disclose, or somebody, somehow or another you get discovered, and all of a sudden this spouse's world falls apart. I mean, it totally comes to pieces. Now, this is the day that where what they thought they knew, who they thought they were married to, the marriage they thought they had, even the person they thought they were, is suddenly totally shattered. So they don't even know what's what. They don't know what's true, what's real, what their life's really been like, who they've really been married to. So you've got to understand, you as the addict have always lived with this addiction for many, many, many years, for most of you. And so this is not a secret. This is something that you have either put in a box or compartmentalized or justified or denied or whatever else until finally this whole thing is blown up in your face. But for the spouse, for the most part, across the board, a large percentage of them have not known everything that's been going on. And so the day that all that comes to the surface, it totally blows them out of the saddle. It blows their world apart. Now, they're walking around trying to figure out, there are times where they've challenged you. There's times where they said, that's too much of this, or why are you doing that, or why did this happen, or where did this money go, or those kinds of things. They don't understand that. But they have felt kind of crazy over the years. It's certain things that just didn't add up, but they didn't know where to go with it or what to do. Or you told them, as the addict, that they were just crazy. So they're wandering around in their world not realizing that it was actually blown all to pieces. And that what was reality was that this is where they really were all along, where before that's what they thought. And so that's not reality. Reality is this. And so obviously they're in a panic mode. Now, explaining to them what brought this all about doesn't change the fact that their universe just blew up. That this is the reality that they've been living all along. This is the truth. Now, maybe you weren't caught up into this point. Maybe you didn't get busted at this point. Maybe there weren't major consequences to this point. I don't know. I mean, every one of you got all kinds of different stories out there and different ways of doing this, but the bottom line is, the truth is, this is where your spouse has been all these years. Wandering around in a world that's already blown up. They just didn't know it because they thought this is where they were. So helping them see this is not causing pain. Pain was already caused by your choices already. Now, I want to know this. I want you to see this. If I tell my spouse the truth, I will hurt him. Now that is one of I think, one of the lies, or one of the misconceptions that have been said over and over and over. And I don't buy it. It's not true. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a recovering spouse, I don't believe that. As a matter of fact, I believe that the truth would have really made sanity, would have helped me in my sanity, would have helped me put things together. Otherwise, I had to put it together over many, many years. I don't think that telling your spouse the truth hurts them. Now, is it hurtful? Has the behaviors and choices you've made, are they hurtful? Yes. But at least telling them the truth about what they've lived through doesn't hurt them. It's what they lived through that hurt them. Now, is it better for our relationship not to tell my spouse what I did? It will only hurt them. That's another angle at the same thing. Bottom line is this. Your shame keeps you hiding in the bushes. Your shame keeps you hiding with a story in your head that if she or he really knew who I was, they wouldn't love me, they wouldn't stay with me, they would abandon me, they would hate me. Now, Those are the stories in your head, and that's the shame talking, and that's the shame that keeps you in the bushes. You'll never experience intimacy. You'll never get to the short place. You're never going to find vulnerability and joy of life as long as you believe that misconception here, and you follow this route. You will die, and they will bury you in your shame. Now, if shame's a factor in secret, silence, and how is it keeping the facts secret? Let me read that again. If shame is a factor in secrets and silence, then how is keeping the facts a secret and staying silent reducing shame in anyone's life? No, the bottom line is this is a long-winded way of saying that we know through Dr. Brene Brown's work, which I highly recommend. You can get any of her books. One of the things I like best, it kind of covers all the books together, is her videotape series, The Power of Vulnerability, which you can get those CDs and, not videos, they're CD tape, disc. I highly recommend them. I mean, best money I ever spent. It's incredible good information. I love the work she's done. Anyway, bottom line is talking about that shame generally keeps us. One of the things that causes shame to grow exponentially is secrets, silence, and judgment. Now, I'm going to guarantee you that if you think, I suspect that there is this tendency to say that if I tell them the truth, they will judge me. But I'm going to tell you right now, you've already judged you. Haven't you? Because you've already said that if I tell them the truth, then they're going to hate me, or they're not going to like me. Why is that? Because you already don't like you. You've already judged you. And I'm going to tell you right now, across the board, and almost 40-something years of doing counseling, one thing I've seen more than anything else is that we're the worst judge on ourselves of anybody out there. And so you're judging yourself. You haven't even given your spouse a chance to do that yet. You're already doing it. So you're already in shame, and it's growing every day. Now, often we withhold information to seek to manage somebody else's emotions. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to get them all screaming, mad and angry. I don't want them crying or hurt and all that. You're managing and manipulating their emotions. Second is that you're seeking to control their decisions. If they don't have enough information, then they're not going to leave you. In other words, if you're saying that if they knew this about me, they would divorce me, then you're trying to control or manage their decisions by not giving them the information to even make a decision. And you don't even know. I mean, in your mind, you've judged them by saying that if they knew this about me, they'd leave. You might be selling them short. You'd be surprised at how many spouses will stay in there and work if you work your program. If you would be honest, more divorces that I've worked with and hundreds of couples over the years, 25 years of doing this work in sexual addiction, I would say, by and large, a majority of the divorces that have taken place once they've gotten into the program in recovery has not been because of slips and relapses. It's because of the lying. It's because of you not disclosing truth. By and large, over and over, without a doubt, that is the foremost reason why people eventually, the spouses eventually throw in the towel and says, I'm done. They're not so done with your slips and relapses as your lying. Your lying is what kills it. Now, you often withhold truth to avoid the reaction of their choices. Their reaction to our choices. I mean, in other words, you're trying to avoid that, so you don't want to go through that. You don't want to go see their pain. And it's not because of their pain, it's your pain. That you have to sit there and watch them hurt and writhe in pain. You know, that's your thing. And then often we seek to hide our own behavior and shame, to avoid that. We hide it. I mean, that is a normal thing that you've done over the years. Well, it's not going to keep working if you're going to do recovery. Recovery is about a commitment to reality, a rigorous honesty program. Now, the questions you have to ask yourself are this. Who am I really protecting by holding this information? By and large, 100% of my clients, when they come down to it, they're initially saying, well, I'm trying to protect my spouse. They finally get it. No, you as the addict are trying to protect yourself, not your spouse. And the other is just malarkey. Then the next one is that, does what I need to disclose help my spouse make informed decisions? In other words, being careful what you disclose. You don't need to get into graphic details. I tell the spouses over and over, if I can get to them before they've wrung it out of you or threatened your life and limb to get this stuff out of you, they end up hurting themselves. But are you giving them information they need to make sense of their world? and to make informed decisions of what they're going to do. I mean, wouldn't you rather them say, okay, now you've given them enough information, do you think they're going to leave you? Or you would certainly leave you if you knew that. And then all of a sudden, they'd say, no, I'm going to stay with you. And you've told them all your stuff, and they look you in the eye and say, I will stick it out with you. And you stick it out, and you do your recovery, and 5 years down the road, you're looking at some man or woman in your life that knows you all the way out, all your dirt, your grime, your slime, your scum, everything, and they still look at you and says, I love you, and I'm staying with you. Now, that can't be bought, except for hard work and honesty. You can't trade that. That is something that every one of us longs to stand at the short place, buck naked, and somebody stand across from us and say, Eli, I like you. I see you, I know you, and I like you. That does something deep in our soul that there's no amount of money can heal for. I mean, you can't buy that. The only way you can get that is going through the process of being honest. Now, will kindness rule in your whole process? Are you going to be kind to your spouse? Will what I'm sharing build trust with the one I'm sharing it with? Well, how you're doing it and what you're doing is in that spirit of kindness instead of bitterness and anger towards that person, then yes, you will build trust. You will begin that process of that person healing. You will begin the journey. But if you go at it with bitterness and anger, you will reap the whirlwind. I've seen that backfire in such a way that it is totally destroyed. Bitterness and anger becomes, and resentment comes into the relationship, and it gets nasty. Nobody wins with that. Now, why disclose the truth? I believe that disclosing the truth of what has been happening allows the spouse clarity, thus making sense of what has felt to them an insane existence, and they've never been able to put the two together. Because you see, this piece right here is how they begin their trust building. Their gut has been screaming that something is wrong, but you've been telling their heads, and their denial and not wanting to see whatever else has been going on up here has not connected. And so they just kind of disconnect. They decapitate themselves. And so what they know and what they sense in here don't match. They're not going to trust anything until that gets back together. You're doing a big, huge step in the trust process of allowing their gut and their head. Most often, spouses are not real happy with hearing what they've heard, but most often they will say, well, at least it makes sense now. I know I'm not crazy. That's a huge step in helping them build trust, because they got to trust themselves before they can trust you. So that's huge. I can't undersell that one. Now, disclosing provides a platform to begin to rebuild trust with your spouse, whether or not you stay married. Trust is important for the two of you to seek to continue, if you have children, to continue to raise them. You're going to have to trust them, because if you don't, if trust is never built in there, then there will never be a cohesive, unified front for those children, even if you're divorced. I'm telling you right now, you can divorce them on paper, but if you got children, you're still stuck together unless one of the two of you decide to just take off and go to the other side of the country. Disclosing begins that basic foundation for rebuilding trust with your spouse. And it doesn't matter. I mean, people say, well, if we get in divorce, well, I'll tell them the truth. Well, it's an act of kindness, at least out of your recovery, to give to that person, whether they choose to stay with you or not, a gift to move them towards sanity. That at least their life will begin to say, well, at least now my life makes sense. I can begin to put the pieces together and move on. If not, then they spend years swirling, trying to make sense out of the insane existence that they've had for years. Now, disclosing the truth may not prevent future disclosures of disappointment. However, staying current every 24 hours is beneficial to your trust-building benefits. I mean, just think about this. If you have a slip within 24 hours, you're telling your spouse, I'm telling you right now, the slip is not far. And once again, I'm just saying, be real specific as to what that looks like and how you're going to do that. Have your therapist work through with you on that. But I'm telling you, if you'll stay current with your wife, your trust building will go a whole lot shorter than it would ordinarily. Don't leave them guessing as to where you are. Tell them up front. Preempt any of their questions about where you are and whether your sobriety is. Don't wait and let them figure that out. Then disclosing truth is the first step you need to make in learning to live vulnerability, integrity, and transparency. This is part of your own growth, dude. Folks, I mean, you living in a transparent way, current with all those people around you, is significant in your own maturation and development as a person. Being a person to show up place that you always were intended to be. Now, that process is got to require a higher power in your life. You can't do that on your own, I don't believe. And so I encourage you to involve your higher power. Make this a part of your prayer life, your meditation life, whatever, to connect with your higher power on a regular basis so that you can be this kind of person. See, because being this kind of person is about you. It's not about your spouse. This is who I want to choose to be, whatever the cost. Now, that's a rigorous program. That's a person of integrity. Now, just think on this, a few things. If I've been medicating and hiding because of shame that I felt, then will continuing to hide reduce the shame that I felt up to now? No. Now, if I've come to the show-up place, transparent and honest, because of my shame, and then how will not disclose and ever change that condition of shame? In other words, if I come, it may be painful. There's no guarantees. There's no certainty in this business of being vulnerable. But you get out there and you get naked, and you find here's something that the other person stayed. The other person was willing to walk it out with you as they saw you work your program. But if you don't disclose, your condition of shame will never change. You can choose to stay in the bushes. I believe God has made all of us a person to show up at the show-up place. You can't make a relationship happen. But I think God's intent for us is to live here and not down in the bushes. You can't continue to hide. At least you'll never hide from him or yourself. So whether you're here or you're here, you're still going to experience the struggle of that shame. Remember, God has made you a show-up person to come to the show-up place. And just like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, that God created that whole setup, that whole show-up place, so that he could show up with Adam and Eve. The one thing that drove Adam and Eve into the bushes and ran from God was their shame. It wasn't even their sin. It was their resulting shame that somehow or other God was going to judge them. And I just say to you, this is what God's intended for you, to live this way as a person, to live this way in your relationship with your spouse, to live this way in your relationship with a community. I challenge you to be a show-up person.